Good evening, everyone. Today is Tuesday, June 1st, 2021, and I am Ramona Burton, parent representative for Watkins Elementary and co-chair for the LSAT. I'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting this evening, and I'd like to begin by asking everyone, all of the actual members of the LSAT team, to introduce themselves.
Catherine, parent representative. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Eben McPherson. I am the Peabody teacher rep.
Hi, everyone. This is Annie Slattery, another Peabody teacher.
Peabody parent rep.
Can you all hear me? I'm having my.
We heard you, Ms. Griffin, and then you went out.
Oh.
Now you're unmuted. Okay.
Perfect. Ms. Griffin, co-chair and second grade math teacher at Watkins.
Beth Rosera, parent rep. Nope, not parent rep. It's been a long day. Teacher rep, Stuart Hobson.
Beth Dewhurst, the other Beth at Stuart Hobson, union rep.
Ernestine Black, Stuart Hobson, teacher representative.
Erin Gordon, Stuart Hobson, teacher representative.
Any other LSAT team member present who have not had the opportunity to introduce themselves? Okay, we'll move on to our school leaders.
What's first on the agenda, Ramona? I see the LSAT election results. Am I looking at the?
I didn't, and maybe I missed it because I was trying to help Ms. Griffin get in. But did you
introductions? Sorry,
introduce yourselves already? I might have missed
we didn't. M. Scott Berkowitz, principal at Watkins and Peabody.
Eric Fraser, principal at Stuart Hobson Middle School.
Okay, last call. Any other team member present from either of our campuses before I go into the first agenda item?
Hi, this is Gertie, Stuart Hobson, parent rep.
Hi, Gertie. Well, thank you. We'll have those who arrive after this point to introduce themselves later on. Again, I'd just like to welcome everyone to our last meeting of the year. Thank you for being here, spending this time with us. The first item on our agenda is to share the results from our LSAT election and to introduce our new team members that will be joining us next year. So I'm going to start at the top with Stuart Hobson. We had one nominee, Ms. Kirslyn Featherstone, and she overwhelmingly received the majority vote. So thank you. Is Ms. Featherstone here? If you could just say hello, wave, everyone can see you. All right. You're on mute.
Hello, how is everyone?
Good.
Thank you, welcome. And
Thank
for
you.
our Watkins campus, I'd like to welcome, if she's present, I should have looked, Miss Kathy Ziesel. Did I say that right, Kathy?
Ziesel, close enough.
Ziesel, thank you, and my apologies. She also overwhelmingly received the majority vote. And for our Peabody campus, we had two wonderful, fabulous nominees, Miss Sarah Sisna and Miss Donna McAllister. And I want to share that they received an equal number of votes, which left me in a stir this weekend. But in consultation with Bijan Verlin. He's our representative from the Communications and Engagement Office. He shared with me that he thought the best thing to do was for me to share this information with the LSAT, and that as a team, we should discuss including them both, because he thought that it would be a wealth of information and a benefit to our team to include them both, and making sure that that was allowed. I was looking through the guidelines. He said it's literally a team decision. And so I just want to share that with the team members present. I need to look, and Catherine, if you can help me, I don't know how many of our team members are missing, but I just want to make sure that as we make this decision, because it's going to be a lasting decision, that we have a quorum present, right? Which is at least half of us.
Yeah, I would say we do. We have parents and teachers from each campus present.
Okay. All right. So it is as simple, I was informed it is as simple as saying if any team member objects to extending the invitation to join our team, to let me know, let us know now before we officially invite them both to join the team. And hearing none, give me 1 second. So the other thing is, before I extend the invitation to them both, right? I want to allow both of the nominees to maybe provide some input, because I think in reading your backgrounds, I see why the vote was tied, right? That was a really hard decision. So,
well, in all honesty, I voted for Donna.
Sarah, you gotta love Sarah.
I mean, I read it, I was like, well, heck. So I'm happy to yield.
You're happy to yield. Is Donna present? I'm scrolling my screen.
I'm here.
I see it. Okay.
Sharing is great. So
sharing is great, and I'm also happy to yield either way.
I think the more the merrier, I always say. But
so here's what I can do. Well, you can think on it. You can, Sarah, if you'd like to yield. I mean, there was, I asked all the questions like, do we need to have a runoff? What do we do? And he just said, literally, as a team, you guys can make that decision. So Sarah, you just threw a monkey wrench in there to say, oh, I'm gonna yield to her. So I'll just.
Well, that way you don't have to have your fancy vote.
Okay, you're right, I don't. So let's do this. Let's
It does look like Ms. Dewhurst has a.
Oh, let me see.
And she's on your team.
Okay, hold on.
No, I had my hand raised before we started this. It's cool.
Oh, I missed
that. It's an introduction, but let's finish this first. I'll go real quick after that. No worries.
Okay, so what I will, so let's leave it at this, right? We can, I didn't hear an objection from the team. And in consultation with Bijan and him being okay with it, it sounds like the team is actually okay with it, but it may sound like Sarah probably wants to think about it, right? So now that there's another.
If we're both able to join, then I would love to be an additional voice.
Okay, that's what I didn't want to I didn't want. Thank you for that. Okay, so again, I want to.
Madam Chair, I try to make your life easier, not more difficult.
All right. Well, if there are no objections, what I do need to do is to go through and have what he called a voice vote. So Catherine, if you can assist with that, I kind of just need to document that we held a voice vote and that this many said yes and however many no's, just for the official minutes.
I'm having so much fun documenting my last meeting as much as so thanks for making me feel so special.
So, Catherine, do you have the list of the team members out where you do the
Yeah, so I'm
attendance?
gonna go through
If
everyone.
you, if you could, I think that would just make it a lot easier for those of us who, for the minute purposes. I mean, I'd like to just say yes, everyone said yes, but I think for official minutes, I need to have it documented.
Absolutely. Okay. Starting with Peabody, so I'll do myself first. I am in favor of having 2 parent reps elected. Shannon.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Evan.
Did you say Evan?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in favor.
Slattery. Yeah.
In favor.
And then Ramona.
In favor.
And I have not seen Pamela Dickerson yet. Has she joined? No. Okay. Griffin.
Yes, I'm in favor.
Rowe.
In favor.
Czerkowski. Ms. Czerkowski, are you on?
I am. I'm in favor.
Okay. And I haven't seen Ms. Sullivan yet. Have you joined?
Ms. Sullivan is out today. She sent me an email earlier.
Got it. Okay. And same with, I'm not seeing Steve Sweeney either. So Gertie.
Yes, in favor.
Ms. Black
Yes, in favor.
and Ms. Fisk, have you joined?
Ms. Fisk is absent today.
Great. Ms. Rosero?
Yeah, in favor.
Ms. Gordon?
In favor.
And I don't think Ms. Hargrove has joined. So then, and Ms. Prophet has not joined yet. So Ms. Dewhurst.
In favor.
All right. Are there any LSAT members who I have not called on? Then it's unanimous. We now have 3 Peabody reps to LSAT. Thank you.
Thank you so much and welcome to our team. We will have a summer transition meeting where we'll, make some important decisions about next year, what day of the week we will meet and times, and we typically work that out with our school leaders. I know this year we're not changing any school leaders. Thank you for staying, and but we will work with all of our summer schedules, pick a date that works for the majority of the team. And in doing that, I kind of wanted to throw out some weeks that we could possibly do that. And so we can decide by email later, but I'm looking at the last 2 weeks in July. So the July 19th through the 30th, those weeks. And then that second week in August 9th through the 13th. I probably should have asked our school principals if they preferred, they had a preference on the day of the week during the summers. But what I'll do is I'll send an email out, I'll add our new members, and I can send an email out to all. We can kind of fill it in. One of the little tools that we use at work to pick the best date. So I think that's going to be best for us all in terms of selecting the date that works. Yes.
Ramona?
Yeah.
As we look to summer, I would like to let folks on the call know that a familiar face will be building rep for Stewart Hobson. Bethany Rosera is taking the reins. I'm very excited about that. Ms. Black is returning, and so Ms. Rosera will loop in. We had our election for teacher reps, and she'll loop those folks in for the summer meeting you're just talking about. So just want to let people know the new face of building rep for Stewart.
And it's the same name, so it should be just Beth all the way around.
Beth, well, thank you for sharing that information with us. we definitely, are you sharing that means you're leaving us all together? Are you making an announcement?
I guess I can.
I didn't know. I didn't.
I mean, the staff at Stewart know. I shared with our W2 members a few weeks ago that it's a good reason. We no longer need 3 reading intervention teachers. The literacy breakdown is actually flipped and towards improvement and an upward trend. So I've kind of had my eye on a while, my diminishing rosters. So that's a great reason to access a position, and I'm the one, because we have an amazing Alva Abdus-Salam who year after year scores the top in everything and all things Read 180. She's like the best in the city. So I'm also finishing my doctoral degree this summer, and we'll be seeing what other things come my way. So yeah, that's the other part of the transition there. So
well, congratulations to you on improving the reading performance of our children at Stewart Hobson, as well as on completing your doctoral degree. I know what that's like, and there's so much more in store for you. We're going to miss you, though. I'm going to miss you a whole lot. Let me say that. I definitely will miss you a whole lot, and I'm happy to know that we have another great Beth coming to replace you on this team, because I'm going to make sure you tell her how much we talk outside of this meeting. Okay, all right. So thank you for that information. The next item on our agenda is actually budget updates, or the ESSER, specifically around the ESSER funding request. During our meeting last month, our principal shared, and we all knew from the news that the district was receiving an additional $14 million in funding. And we did have a closed LSAT meeting following that to discuss how best to use the funds. I received an email from a few parents asking more information about it. I didn't know, I know we had a closed meeting, so I did not publicly share anything that we've discussed in terms of those plans. So I wanted to put this on the agenda to have our principal share what could be shared around that. Because the email that one of the emails that I specifically received spoke about a spreadsheet that DCPS provided to the city council about the specific dollars given to each campus, and that it appeared that Peabody and Stewart Hobson received negative amounts of money, which she said wasn't possible, and wanted clarification. So I just kind of shared like what I could share, and I didn't get into any specifics. So I just wanted to bring it up here so that we can discuss it as a team publicly. So I don't know which one wants to go first. So Mr. Fraser, thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I think I can speak kind of for both of us. So we're talking about the opportunity that we had to apply for extra money, right? So I think if I remember, the DCPS and the city identified, first they wanted to make any schools whole that had suffered from a budget reduction overall. And then I believe they tried to fulfill any budget assistance requests that were put in with the initial budget. And then they allowed schools to apply for whatever funding was left over if there were kind of new budget requests. And I think Peabody and Watkins, I think, and Principal Workers can correct me, I believe Peabody and Watkins were made whole to some degree. And then the result of our closed door meeting was to ask for funding that would have allowed us to split a position. But we did not get that. That request wasn't fulfilled enough. We got a yes on our side, and I think there was a no to Peabody and Watkins for that extra budget assistance. Why we would show as negative, I have no idea, because we have not, nobody's taken money away from us that I know of yet. So why Stewart's shown as in the negative, I don't know.
Just in case it comes back via an email, I know that Lona and I both received that one email where specifically they gave numbers. And when I looked back at the email, it wasn't until I looked back that I realized it was way off from even what I knew from behind closed doors. So in case you get an email or an inquiry from someone, it actually indicated let me read my notes. New federal relief money that was allotted to Watkins was $168,854. And that was just not the numbers we discussed, Principal Berkowitz. So if it comes back up, and I didn't see this spreadsheet, I only saw what was in an email, but that was much different to my recollection. So we don't really have to talk about it because it's not a, you know, it is an factual number, but I don't know.
Do we know if it was a combination of those acceleration dollars plus which version of ESSER are we on now? ESSER 2, ESSER 3? Because I remember
Okay, I'm sorry. I was gonna say, I'm not really sure what the spreadsheet was, but here's how it broke down. It says for Watkins Elementary FY 2022, initial $4,683,133, budget assistance 0, stimulus funds that can't be used in the budget $164,961, and then new federal relief money $168,854. And so I'll send it to you, Principal Berkowitz, and then just in case it comes back up, but I knew that number didn't represent what we were told and what we were working with, but that was what was in the spreadsheet according to what I was given, that was sent to the council.
I think there's been a couple of drops, right? Like there's the ESSER 2, there's the ESSER 3, and this one, Ramona, is not tracking with those first two for me. The 156 number for Watkins sounds familiar. That's what we were talking about before the next drop came with this budget assistance thing that Principal Frazier just shared. So I'm not. I'd like to see what you have there to make sure that it's right.
Okay, not a problem. I'll share, and that's why I just wanted us to give an update on what we did submit. And I heard that we're not getting the extra position, but okay.
Yeah, can I add to what Eric said? So Watkins and Peabody didn't need to be made whole on our budget. We had more money technically, although it went less far. What we applied for the first round of our budgeting and staffing was budget assistance. We were budgeted 1.5 PE teachers at Watkins, right? We can't fulfill the Healthy Schools Act with 2 45-minute sessions of PEs for every student. With 1.5 teachers, we need 2 full ones, and they didn't fund it. I don't know if they funded anybody with our like student enrollment at that level. A lot of other principals in our cluster have the same issue. So I asked for budget assistance so we can fulfill that like per the budget, and got denied. So we had to take a 0.5 position from, I don't remember exactly where we got it, but that's how we fulfilled, like funded 2 PE teachers. And because we put in for that budget assistance, the thing that Mr. Frazier was saying, the first tier was make school whole and then fulfill the budget assistance from the first round of the budgeting. That's how Watkins got the extra. It's about $56,000 for a half of a person, half of a teacher. And that's the money we use to buy an additional instructional aid, and then kind of squirrel away some money for either acceleration or tutoring or professional learning in the future. So that's how we spent that. Yeah, and then the shared position was a no. I put in a request for some like damage relief for our flood. They also said no to that too over at Peabody.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Thank you. Next on our agenda, any questions from anyone on the team regarding what was just shared? And I'm trying to monitor chat too.
I had a question about, is the negative budget that someone sent you, is that possible? Like I've seen chatter that the negative stuff might be just accounting that school budgets are like by like around 2.2% less this year than they did last year because of cost of living increases. So I wasn't sure if the negative like, even if school budgets remain the same this year as they did last year, they're buying less because of the raises that have to be accounted for. I wasn't sure if that was what was accounted for in the negative. I don't know what's in front of you, but if that was the negative budget that was accounted for.
And as I look at it, it was just a statement. She didn't show any negative numbers. She listed, and I'm looking at Principal Fraser's comment about that number accounting for the initial acceleration funds. So in this, for the 2 campuses, she said they were reporting negative, receiving negative amounts of money. She listed stimulus funds that couldn't be used in school budgets. So the original FY22 budget allocations for Peabody, for Stewart Hobson, and they do align with what is publicly available. And then it says stimulus funds that can't be used in school budget is $50,000 at Peabody, which is probably their acceleration, initial acceleration funding. And then $178,754. Does that sound like your initial acceleration fund amount for Stewart Hobson, Principal Fraser? Because that's what she lists. She didn't give any new federal relief money. She just said negative, but I don't see where it's a negative amount. Maybe it's negative as in none. But
What was that? What was the amount you read for us?
178,754.
That sounds right. Yep.
Okay. And then Ms. Ford wants to know if there's an appeals process, I guess, so us being rejected for the additional money that you requested for Peabody, to replace some of the, damaged materials, and then the other half of that position. Any appeals process?
I just put in the.
Oh,
I just put in the chat. There's not an appeals process that I know of, but I know that the chancellor sent some like DCPS community emails. I think I don't know if they've happened yet, but like town halls asking the broad DCPS community for feedback about how this money should be spent. I don't think the money that that last round of money that we all jockeyed for, I don't think is the bottom of the bucket. I think there's more money there that they're figuring out how they want to allocate and spend, but there's not like an appeals process open specifically for what we just got yeses or nos about. But there might, I guess all that goes to say, like, there might still be a chance for us as a school community to influence how remaining, relief dollars get allocated in the coming weeks and months.
Thanks for that clarification. Any other questions on this topic before we move on? Okay, I'm looking for hands and I don't see any. Okay. So next on our agenda is an update on our equity initiative, specifically Kindred. Last week at our PTA meeting, we as a community heard lots of information about the work that Kindred is doing in our schools with our parents. And I thought, and with LSAT, got a request to share that perspective from the teachers. So I emailed Mr. Berkowitz, and he so graciously reached out to one of the staff members who agreed to join us this evening and share. So
that's right. I'm going to tee up Miss Stacy Taylor. Miss Taylor is a pre-K3 teacher at Peabody, has been for a little while. And she has been not only working with Kindred, but she's been a prominent voice on the equity team back at school, working with our small group equity conversations with staff. And she's going to talk about the teacher only team, and then that's recently merged with the parent caregiver team as well to form like this equity team. And Ms. Taylor can talk about details there. Thank you for coming, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you for having me, guys. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. So I wrote up a little blurb that I'm just going to read, because if anyone knows me and knows that I can talk on and on and on about equity. So, so I'm just going to read. Sorry, it's like super impersonal, but I'll try to look up and make eye connection when possible. So for those of you who don't know what Kindred is, so Kindred is an organization whose mission is to support parents, staff, and school-based in schools and school-based educational leaders in partnering to co-design equitable, anti-racist schools that advance collective well-being. In this process, to achieve this mission of Kindred, a staff group and a parent group was formed, and we had several discussions to get to know each other. We did some team building, trust building. We did some conversations to understand multiple perspectives, and we were able to kind of find common ground. During these discussions, we deepened our understanding of racism on all levels and developed skills to address the inequities and racism that affects our students' education. Us individually, so the teacher group individually, and the caregiver group individually, and kind of met and had these several discussions over the course of many, many months throughout the year. And so individually, we are a very passionate group of people who, you know, always look at equity and love to have equity conversations. But I think once Kindred kind of facilitated us to have these conversations together, it just kind of super boosts our fuel to kind of make real change, especially focusing on real change that we are able to attain, which is within our schools. And so that kind of led us to focus on some initiatives that I will list out next. So our overarching theme, I'm losing my spot, sorry guys. Initiatives to equity team. Okay, so then we had some initiatives and we talked through some overarching goals, and then we met together. So the staff group met together with the staff group met together with the caregiver group to kind of talk more about how are we going to take the first steps through our initiatives and our goals and share with those, share with each other what those were. So after we did some discussion, the questions that led our thinking were, what actions can we take that we can become more equitable, have more equitable collaboration between schools and all, between our school and all of our schools, take stakeholders, who are those stakeholders in those conversations that need to be had, and then also what are the first steps that we can take moving towards those goals. So as a staff, we came up with like 3 main buckets to work towards this equity. One of the main buckets was equitable academic support. Another was infusing love and joy into our Capitol Hill Cluster School experience. And then the last bucket was trust and relationships with a focus on family partnerships. Some first discrete actions that the staff have decided to take was to kind of come together with the equity team to form like an inventory of what all equity work that the school is already doing, right? We have a lot of groups that are doing equity work, and we want to kind of inventory what those are, so then we could kind of outline how we can leverage those stakeholders and building out a plan for more equity work to align with some of the goals that the school has already had. Another great outline. Losing my spot, sorry. Okay, so another goal that aligns with the equity academic support is that staff are planning to kind of coordinate some vertical planning to kind of get together to discuss what are some units and skills and things that we were able to cover during this COVID year, virtual, hybrid, not hybrid, kind of hybrid year of learning. And then what are the gaps, right? Then we kind of plan moving into next school year to kind of anticipate those gaps that our students are coming with. And so those are kind of like our 2 main goals that the staff have identified to kind of jumpstart some of these overall bucket initiatives. I'm going to let the caregivers, if anyone wants to share, I see Sarah on here, but I'll kind of summarize with justice some of the goals that they are looking at, and then Sarah, feel free to jump in there if I miss anything. But for the caregivers, their main focus was building trusting relationships and family partnerships. And the main initiative caregivers came up with was to diversify the PTA leadership. And so one discrete action that they came up with was to start with a conversation with the PTA and PTA leadership to kind of collaborate and figure out how can we move towards this goal of diversifying our leadership and ultimately the PTA makeup. Feel free to jump in, Sarah, if I missed anything.
We are actually in the, Lona, it's funny because Lona, you beat us to the punch. Lona emailed us to ask for a meeting and we're like, yes, that's actually really what we want. So it's in the process of getting scheduled. Probably will happen in July.
So I hope I kind of gave an overview of kind of the work that we've been doing and hope to continue to do throughout the next school year.
Thank you very much for sharing that. It definitely, I could see the alignment between, you know, the work that you all are doing separate from parents. And it was a pleasure to actually hear it. I know I read Principal Berkowitz's weekly emails and he's been sharing a lot, like the word you guys have worked on, you know, the different equity work. And so it's been enjoyable to kind of, you know, read the summary of it, but to hear from a teacher really helps us to get a bigger picture. So that any team members present have any questions for Ms. Taylor? I'm saying thanks for the update, Ms. Taylor. So yes, thank you, Ms. Taylor. Any hands I'm missing? Nope. All right. Sounds like you guys are doing great work. And I heard Sarah chime in to share what the parent group is doing. So I just want to say thank you to both groups, the caregiver group and to the staff for the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Ms. Taylor.
For having me. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the CSP end of year evaluations. And I think for this, we talked about having breakouts by campus. Principal Fraser, are you able to drop a Teams link? No, yeah, Teams link in for those who, okay. And so when we do this, I know that some of us present have kids at both Peabody Watkins as well as Stewart Hobson. So you can pick a side. We're recording this. Principal Fraser will send me a recording of what they did there and some notes. So if you want to see both, you will have an opportunity to see them both later, but you do at this point have to choose which one you're gonna go to. So I see in your chat, Principal Fraser just dropped a message. I mean, a link. Let me see. Can you access that? I don't see it as a link. I don't think they can click it. Principal Fraser, take a quick. Wait a minute. I see it. Can. Got it. Okay. And I'm going to allow Principal Berkowitz to share his screen. 1 second.
Ramona, when would you like us to come back?
Let's set a timer. You said 20 minutes is good? 7:05 work.
Why don't I text you a little bit before then and we'll see how you guys are coming along.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Okay. Principal Berkowitz, are you able to share your screen? Check for me.
So yes, I think I'm struggling with the let's see what happens if I do this. I'm a little nervous what's going to be shown. Oh boy. So I got a new computer and I haven't done this on Zoom yet. Shoot. Okay, I have to quit and reopen this. I'm sorry, everybody. Give me a second.
Okay, no problem. While we're waiting on Principal Berkowitz, anyone has any exciting summer plan they want to share? Just want to summer travel. I don't know.
A lot of relaxation.
Lots of relaxation. All right, he did it. We don't see his face back though. Let me see. Oh yeah, I do. He's on mute, but I do see him. Okay.
Okay, good.
Yes, we see it.
All right. I'm sorry I'm a little slow on this now. Let me see what this does. Okay, great. That's what I wanted it to do. Okay, so I'm going to take you through well, good evening, everybody. I'm going to take us through our comprehensive school plan evaluation. I think this is a new process point in the continuous improvement cycle. So I'll briefly talk about where we are. Okay, so our job was to, by the 11th, conduct our evaluation with our team and share that with the LSAT. You know what I got to do is screenshot this for documentation purposes. Done. So here's ultimately we're going to finish by July 22nd. We'll have the finished revisions to the new comprehensive school plan for next year. What's great is that like the starting point for this was last year's the current year's CSP, and the evaluation is basically like evaluate how we did with our CSP this year. So how do we get here? We started with a step back meeting after our MOI data regarding academics. We looked at 3-year trends in reading and writing with our coaches and our school leaders. We also did a deep dive with our panorama data with our student responses and our family responses regarding our culture and family engagement efforts. And then in our ALT, we did a round robin reflection with the shared leadership bucket. There's 4 buckets. Let me back up. 4 buckets to the CSP: academics, student culture, family engagement, and then shared leadership. We didn't really have concrete data on the shared leadership piece, which is why we engaged the ALT in, frankly, the same questions that we're going to ask you all tonight. And we're using these to refine our CSP, right? We might make some changes in our goals. I'm going to talk about that. We are going to make some changes in our strategies. I don't think that changes like the direction very much, but I think it makes things more specific. To be frank, I didn't find the current CSP very accessible for me. So the evaluation frame, like this is what I'm asking you all tonight, is that we had to, well, this is what we have to ask ourselves is, how are we, our students, our staff, our families doing? And how do we know? What was our team's reflection from this year, and what will we do next year, especially to accelerate learning, right? So the questions for you all that I'd like to have feedback on is, what else should we consider and what further details should we add, right? So I'm going to name a couple of things. I think almost everything should sound quite familiar to this group if you've been on with us every month. And one thing I want to add is like the comprehensive school plan probably shouldn't be the title, because it can't be comprehensive, right? If we have every single thing we need to work on in the school plan, it's too much of a monster. So I want this school plan to be lean and want to be targeted on the key moves that are going to advance student learning, especially in our underperforming is probably not the right word, but our students that are performing at lower levels, and also address the like culture concerns and family engagement needs. What we're not going to do tonight, I'm going to share some data. Like we could go for hours on our data. I'm going to keep it at a high level. Okay, so tonight is not a deep dive into the available data. I don't have everything in front of me to answer questions that might come up about the data. So just I'm going to set expectations there. But I am going to share some of the data. So I'm going to basically tell the story of like what we did, right? And I think I did that already, right? We talked about our step back results, which is we have this great 3-year data trend set that we looked at. And looking at it with the numbers is one thing, but looking at it with like the stories and the history and the context of the last few years at Watkins and Peabody was also really valuable. And I'm glad that we could hear from our folks that had that longitudinal perspective. You know, the high level takeaways on our academic side is like, historically, we've not been very successful at moving students from not yet proficient to proficient, right? Like we are not closing gaps. We know we have the racial gap that's significant when it comes to math and literacy achievement. That gap is even wider when it comes to our students with disabilities. So I wonder, like, that's like the freshest PARCC data, and we see that on every data set, but like, how has it looked over time with our kids who started off behind? Like, how do we serve them well? And it turns out like there's not many stories or not very many data points of our students that have been with us for 3 years that we moved from below proficient to proficient. And that's something that we want to address in next year's and all CSPs going forward. So part of the reason we thought that, hearing from the ELA, one of the successes was like there was consistency in the ELA department with like the leadership and the commitment to guided reading and writers workshop. This in the last maybe 18 months, maybe 2 full years has been consistent. With math, things have been a little different, less consistent. And so we're going to make sure, and we've been working on this with our ALT, that those expectations are consistent. When we talk about our MTSS triangle or tier 1 supports, like, does everybody have a normed understanding what those are, and are those being implemented at a high level, right? So that's what we're going to focus on, and what we've been focusing on, including interventions that's supported by a master schedule. And our co-teaching work is really exciting because I think it will connect to a shift in thinking that one of the things that we all need to embrace is that all kids are our kids and all kids are my kids, and I'm responsible for all students, even if they have an IEP, for their success. So we are special ed case managers and teachers. We already have time set aside this summer for co-teaching camp that's going to have a prominent role in our pre-service week in August when we come back with teachers to make sure that we're implementing the best instructional practices, planning practices, structures for collaboration and schedule to ensure that pull out, push in, and all other IEP services are being done at the highest levels. Let me do the whole 4 buckets, and then I'll pause for those questions. Like, what else should we consider, and what other detail might we want to add? So student culture, here's some data. How are our students and staff families doing? How do we know? There's some really nice highlights in our loved, challenged, and prepared index. It did go down 1 point from 2019, which is the last data point that we have. We did not do this in the spring of last year. But our loved went up 5 points, and that's actually an all-time high for the Watkins students. That makes me feel really good. There's 70% of our kids state that they feel a sense of belonging to our school, and that's a good number to be proud of, I think. There's clearly some work to do in that our preparation is down and overall index is down. When we look at what was in the CSP, conscious discipline was in there and not implemented, right? We didn't address it. I don't know that like there were significant action steps or or the capacity to address it given the like dynamicism of this year. But what we are going to do next year, and you've heard this from me before, is is a full investment and a DCPS at the DCPS level and at Watkins and Peabody is the shift to the trauma responsive school model, which does incorporate a lot of the conscious discipline practices, such as strategies for self-regulation and co-regulation that we actually had professional learning on just a couple of weeks ago. Re-enrollment and attendance. I think I've said before to LSAT, like, I don't necessarily want to focus on a re-enrollment data. I really want to see specifics in this Love Challenge Prepared Index increase to have a finer pulse on our culture. I think that's something that we have better influence of versus like families coming back. I want to focus on like the process goals, not necessarily the outcome there. Our attendance was well tracked. Our attendance in Watkins, I think, was better than ever. At Peabody, it was lower than ever because of the online sign-on thing. And our pre-K families just are not signing on at the same rate that they were attending in person. Just so happens our Watkins families are signing on at a higher rate than they were attending in person overall. So that's kind of a scope on attendance. I don't think that's a major concern for us whole tier 1 level, but there are some students that are chronically in need of supports, and that will carry over to next year. But big picture, again, going back to the multi-tiered system of supports for SEL, just as important as our academics. So the key terms in the trauma responsive school model are the 3 R's: relationships, relational trust, routines, and resilience. How are we teaching our kids and our staff to be resilient? And that goes back to that regulation strategies. Okay, family engagement. How are families doing? There were significant declines in all the categories of both schools, with some highlights. I'll go over, I'm actually going to share a little more of the details on these results with our team, with our staff tomorrow. But I'm not surprised by this, given the stressors and the challenges of the pandemic. So we're going to take that with a grain of salt, address it as best we can with an in-person model, and hopefully move past the challenges of the virtual model that we're all back in person next year. What we don't have and what we think we need is a strategic, consistent approach to family engagement. We heard about that from Ms. Taylor on Kindred. And the good news is that we have actually already formed a family engagement leadership team. Ms. Taylor's on it. We have a decent number of staff that are trained in the Flamboyant practices. Flamboyant has partnerships with DCPS schools. We asked for one, they're full up. They're going to support us through the DCPS central office. But members of our family engagement leadership team, it goes all the way from pre-K all the way to 5th grade, members from different grade levels. Ms. Tyler, our social worker, Ms. Caraway is going to be on the team. So we've got a diverse set of stakeholders there. We've already developed a vision. If I can say it fluently, it's to ensure that all caregivers feel a sense of partnership in developing trusting relationships and two-way communication in service of student achievement and wellness. And that's going to be our focus. The thing that we don't have also, like, we're going to pilot some of the Flamboyant practices on small scale, but also establish some school-wide non-negotiables for this two-way ongoing communication and relationship development with families. That's just not something that is a normed practice at our school, at our schools across the board. So our FELT team is going to lead that work next year. All right, and lastly, shared leadership. Like I said, there's no survey data. We did have a conversation with the ALT teams. Our survey data, we don't have to share because our responses didn't meet the minimum number to get there. So one thing we'll do is take surveys in person together next year, because they seem to get lost in email. But also we need to refine our ALT plan for consistency and direction, using data to engage fully in a continuous improvement cycle. Hopefully we won't be dealing with news and reopening 3-4 times next year, right? We'll reopen once. We won't use the ALT to continually tweak the virtual, the in-person, and all the curveballs that were sent our way this year. One, the next year, this all came from, most of it came from teachers. I really think we need to get to this cycle of improvement. But our ALT team was really insightful in talking about how okay, I'm on this team, but what really is my role and how do I influence change and affirm the commitment to the CSP and our school goals as a teacher leader. And I thought that was a really good point. So we're going to make sure that's in place for next year. And then also there's a lot of activity, like our teachers do a lot of different things. There's a lot of teams and a lot of committees, but not everybody feels like access to those teams and access to those committees is fair or equal or even present. So how those, and then the leadership of those folks, like, is it the same? Sometimes it's the same leaders all the time. So we want to be a little more structured, and I guess the word would be equal in terms of providing access to all of our staff to the extra stuff they do. That was a real strong voice from our Peabody ALT members, but it was also there with our Watkins team. Okay, so that was our evaluation frame, right? Like, what else should we consider, and what further detail should we maybe add? And given, I want to say this again, that not everything's going to get into the CSP. If we get everything into the CSP, we'll have 12 priorities, which really means we'll have no priorities. But I'm looking for 1 or 2 high leverage moves in each of the 4 buckets of shared leadership, family engagement, student culture, and academics. The one other thing I wanted to say is, these are all of our goals on our CSP. This is just academics. Here's student culture, family engagement, and shared leadership. To me, this is too many. So I also want to really narrow these and focus on them, and also make sure that our teacher goals, teachers are expected tasks to come back. That's a teacher goal setting. That's part of the teacher evaluation. Make sure that our teacher goals totally line up with our school goals, so that we're all working together. So I'll go back to these frames. Does the team, I think we have maybe 5 or so minutes left, have any things that we should consider, or you want to go make sure this detail gets in there, and we can consider that when we're putting the final touches on our CSP in the next 6 weeks?
This is where any team member present can provide feedback.
Yeah. Principal Berkowitz, could you talk a little more about what the co-teaching model is and how that will help to address some of the academic goals?
Yeah. So there are a variety of co-teaching models that are out there, and I'm lucky enough to have a lot of training from Marilyn Friend, who's one of the nation and world's leader on this stuff. So I'm really excited to get going on implementing these models. So when a student has push-in services, they should receive specially designed instruction that addresses the IEP goals in the general education setting, right? So if someone has a processing issue, there's chunking likely on their IEP as the strategy to implement. The teacher should do that, the gen ed teacher, and also the co-teacher. So that specialized instruction should happen. Now, the format in which it happens needs to be inclusive. Otherwise, we're setting kids apart. So the roles of the 2 teachers in the room should also be maximized to address the needs in the IEP, but all of the learners in the room. So there's 3 models that are generally considered the high leverage ones. It's station teaching, alternative teaching, and parallel teaching. So station teaching is pretty common in elementary schools, where 2 teachers will work in a literacy center or a math center with small groups, right? And the special educator will deliver the specially designed instruction to the kids with IEPs, but maybe sometimes kids without IEPs that are in that group. And then there'll be a rotation. That's the station teaching model. The parallel model is when the class is kind of split in half. In a lot of different ways. It could be all the students with IEPs and others on this side and all the other students on the other side, but it could also be heterogeneously. And the parallel means that the two teachers in the room teach the same content, maybe differently, but in like two small groups. So the student teacher ratio is kind of bettered by a factor of 2. The alternative model is the same setup. It's 2 groups. It's alternative because teacher A is doing, might be doing like different content than teacher B. So teacher B might be going over what might have been missed on yesterday's lesson, where teacher A might be providing an extension. It's another form of, it could be another form of differentiation. The thing that is like a common practice in schools, which I've seen 0 at my time at Peabody and Watkins, because all of the SPED work is virtual this year, is like this one teach and one support, where like generally the homeroom teacher takes on all of the load of the instruction, and like the special ed teacher might kind of sidle up to students with IEPs and like provide them individual support. And I'm not saying that that's bad to do that all the time or at all. It's not bad to do it ever. But if that's the only model of instruction, then there are issues, right? There's no way that specially designed instruction is happening. There's no way that like the kids with IEPs don't get noticed for having another adult kind of hover over them all the time. And that's problematic. And it also kind of like creates more of like a dependence relationship between the students with IEP and the special ed teacher. And frankly, like the special ed teacher are the experts in differentiation, right? And the homeroom teacher might be have more expertise in content, but like those 2 people are equals, and they should have equal authority, and they should have equal leadership of the class. And that's how the 2 teachers should present in a co-taught setting. And again, I've seen 0 of this at Peabody and Watkins, but that's the best practice in what I understand the special education world. So that's where I want to move. That should be a floor, not a ceiling, for supporting our special ed students, but frankly, supporting all of our students, because with the models I discussed, right, like all students have more access to teachers in this way, right? It's not just our students with IEPs.
Thanks for that. I don't know if Catherine had a follow-up, but I have one to her question. And does that impact staffing at all with the hours on their IEP? So,
No.
okay.
Well, yes, it does, but we've accounted for that. Like we got an extra, at Watkins, we have an extra special ed teacher on the budget this year we're hiring for, because we're anticipating, we just happen to anticipate more kids with IEPs. So it does, but the models don't. The service hours need to be exactly the same regardless of our model. But we just have to make sure the service hours are actually done in an inclusive way and in a fair way, where the students with IEPs feel like they are part of the class. And also, maybe more importantly, the special ed teachers feel like they're part of the class and not an assistant. And like I said, no judgment on Watkins Peabody, but like that's been my experience in other schools.
Will the model be the same across grade levels? The whole school will have the same model, or will it depend on the grade?
The models should be driven by the students' needs and like where they are with the content, right? So teachers have agency to get into one of these models at different points, right? The research that I've learned says like those 3 models should be used like at least half of the time, right? So is one teach, one lead appropriate sometimes? Yeah, maybe, right? But if you're doing one teach, one lead all of the time, you're likely not maximizing the 2 adults in the room. So should the model, like those are 3 of the models. There's other models out there that are appropriate at times, but those are the 3 high yield ones. And they should be available to everybody all the time. Now like I said, we're gonna emphasize this in August PD. We're gonna do a 2-day retreat with our SPED teachers about relationship building and co-planning for these models. Do I expect these to be working at a high level in October? No, I don't, but like we're gonna get started. And this will be long-term work.
Kathy, I see a hand.
Hi, Principal Berkowitz. This is actually really exciting. I'm glad to hear we're moving to this new SPED model. I think it'll be really great for students, and hopefully, I know in the past we've actually had paraprofessionals delivering some of the SPED, which I think maybe hasn't been the greatest model of SPED instruction either. So this will be really exciting. The other thing I was just gonna, I think maybe this goes into the family engagement piece you're talking about, but like, obviously I can speak for myself. Like, I know how to make my voice heard. You have certainly heard it throughout this year in many forums, but one thing we've talked about in other groups that I participated in through the school is just there's certainly a cohort of parents that have less success in having their voice heard. So I just, in the same way you've talked about some of the teachers who feel like that there's always the same people on the same committees, really thinking about how communications go out and how we reach out to some of the parents who are less heard from and less get, like, I appreciate this year we're getting things in text and email, like multiple forms of communication, but also just thinking about how both on the parent group side and on just in general, how we're sending stuff out. And I think in person will be easier because we can actually physically give stuff to people and talk to people, which had been, part of the race and equity group plan. But just as you're rolling out a strategy, I think there's like a big group of parents that just have not engaged because they don't feel like they'll have a chance to be heard, and or don't feel like what's being sent to them is stuff that they can engage with. So just figuring out how to get engaged with those parents, I think will be a tricky piece of it, because there's definitely a very, very vocal group of parents, as you already know, at Peabody and Watkins. And so getting into that group, I think will be interesting. And, I've talked to a couple of people on this group about it before, but like the flip between Peabody and Watkins, when you look at the breakdown of who's at Peabody and Watkins, like there's probably siblings of people at Watkins that are eligible for Peabody, but don't even enter the lottery for it. So thinking about how to maybe bridge that gap between some of the schools sometimes may even be a parent and family communication issue also, when you think about those pieces of it, because there's kids who come in out of Boundary later into Watkins.
Right.
Just throwing some stuff out there about how to bridge the gap with some of the parents that come in later.
So I agree with that. And I think, and I've talked to some other, a couple things. Like one are like our panorama survey data is interesting because the families that, one of the things that went up is like families feel like they have the ability to influence what happens at the school, which is interesting. Another thing that was interesting was like families from Ward 7 actually have the most favorable perception of their school experience. I forget the exact question, but like when we break it down by Ward 7 is actually the highest. And I still think you're right? Like, I think influence and like reporting a positive experience aren't the same thing, right? And like, there should be equality and influence. And I don't think I've done enough to address that yet. So that's a good point, Kathy. I would love to like specific suggestions on how to do that, because I feel like I think a lot about how like that as important, but I don't know that I've like done anything action wise, except for like the families that have declined. We've had a pretty significant outreach campaign.
Yeah. I remember I went to one of those meetings with you, and it was still like the same people who you'd expect. It was me and a few other people who were the same people you'd expect to show up to it, not necessarily the parents who I think you most wanted to talk to about declining.
Well, that was just tier 1. We've done,
yeah.
we did a lot.
I mean, maybe you've done others, but just like I'm saying that.
Yeah.
But anyway, maybe we can touch base afterwards, because in my day life, like that's a lot of who I'm working with, and we can maybe, but like I think it'll have to be a lot of like one-on-one outreach at first, just to build up, or maybe through some of the teachers who have good relationships with those families, but outreach to build up some of those relationships, because I think it might not be families who are immediately going to respond to group outreach.
Yeah.
It's about that time. I think our Stuart Hobson friends will be joining us back. I know the one thing that I wrote down was science and social studies, right? I feel like because of the virtual year, we've been, that has kind of fallen by the wayside. So as you look at your CSP for next year, if there's some way to incorporate, addressing those areas more across all grades. Across the grades. So I wrote that science, social studies. And then you said something about not having data, not much data maybe for kids that have gone from not yet proficient to proficient within 3 years. And I didn't know if the data you had wasn't showing that in 3 years it didn't grow, or are you not maintaining those students who are not proficient for 3 years to see if they grew?
No, I'm sorry if I misspoke. We have the data. There were just very few students who went from not proficient to proficient over a 3-year period.
Okay.
We have the data.
Okay.
Right. And at the same time, like I'm going to share this with staff tomorrow. Like this year, there were in the beginning of the year to the middle of the year, there are 3 math teachers, K-5, who did move kids. Half of their kids who started BOY, what did they do? They moved kids. Half of the kids that were started the year below proficient, they moved them up a level in just the first cycle, right? We don't have the end of year data, but I think that's the kind of data we want to see. And that's what happened for 3 teachers in the K-5 math, on the K-5 math team. So that's like a strength to build on for sure. And everyone was virtual at that time. So to figure out how those practices transfer back to the in-person learning, because that's the kind of gap closing we need to see in order to get the outcomes we want for our kids, get everybody to proficient and beyond.
So I did get a message from Principal Fraser. I told him we needed 2 or 3 more minutes when we were still talking at 10 after. So they're probably coming back, but I just want to raise up a comment in the chat from Maggie that says, Principal Berkowitz, is your comment on not wanting to delve into retention specific to this year's re-enrollment number or in general? So that's back to what you shared, the CSP plan.
Yeah. In general, remember, Ramona, we talked about that a couple months ago. Yeah.
I think the way, and I'm trying to remember back to the slide, what it was in that area of what we didn't do so well on, and that was focus on retention, is re-enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
And so my notes is that you want to focus more on engaging families and that love index, so that they feel more loved and welcome. I always get that confused.
Love, challenge, and prepared.
Thank you. Love, challenge, and prepared, as opposed to re-enrollment. I don't know if you had a follow-up for that, Maggie, but yeah. Okay, so that answered the question.
Maggie, I'll explain a little more if you didn't hear me talk about it last time. Like, I want to keep, don't get me wrong, like I want to keep our kids here, right? Like I don't want the 3rd graders to go to some other school in 4th grade, and it's the same with the 4th graders, right? That's the trend that's happening. And that is, I think, a very persistent one from what I understand about the like recent history. I also realize that like there are factors that influence those decisions that might not be up to kids. It might not be up to, but what we can control, I think we have more influence over, is how our kids feel and how our parents feel when they're in the community. And if our sense of belonging goes up and our sense of community, and we build that relational trust that Ms. Taylor was talking about, we'll see the change in the student retention numbers. We'll also see the change in the LC, Love, Challenge, Prepared Index.
Thanks for addressing that. Yes, that all makes sense. I absolutely agree. For our family, like just
someone coming to go to the bathroom.
My daughter, comes home with tears saying another friend is leaving Watkins, and you know, it's an issue in our household for sure. So that's just the only reason I flagged that. It's personal for her.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I think or suggestions on what they should focus on. I think the last question, that's what Principal Barker was wanting. I just got an update from Principal Fraser. They're coming back. They're wrapping up and coming back. But I want to move on in the agenda before they rejoin. Okay, no questions. I will share one thing I forgot to share earlier. I'm gonna share here and I'll reshare it again and before we end the meeting. But I received information about a read-in to save our school libraries. And there's an initiative or an effort to help save the librarians in our school. Apparently, librarians are being eliminated from many of our school budgets. Thankfully, we're not one of those schools, but we need to stand in solidarity, or they're asking that we stand in solidarity with many of our other schools, particularly those that are east of the river, who have either half-time or no librarian at all. And tomorrow, Wednesday, June 2nd, from 4 to 5 p.m., they're asking that you join DC Public School librarians, families, and friends to save school libraries and librarians. And it's going to be a rally at the Wilson Building, the front steps of the Wilson Building tomorrow from 4 to 5 p.m. And they're going to have librarians, teachers, students, parents, and community members to speak. And they to receive free books. Those who attend will receive free books, prizes, treats, and learn how you can support students. So I'll send this flyer out. I'm not sure if Lona sent it out. I'll check before I resend it again through the listserv, but we were both flagged on this event tomorrow that I wanted to share. Are we back yet? Principal Fraser? Oh yeah, we're back. All right, welcome back. Okay. Oh, I muted myself, sorry. So before I repeat that, was all my Stuart Hobson friends back when I just shared the Save Our Libraries initiative? Okay, so I was trying to kill time just so that we start right there. I wanted to share there's a read-in tomorrow, 4 to 5 p.m. at the Wilson Building. It's a rally to help save school libraries. The initiative is to stop DCPS from eliminating your child's school librarian. So I'll send out this this flyer via email this evening if it hasn't already been sent by the PTA, and I'll send it to all the LSAT members as well. Next item on our agenda are our campus updates. I'll give it to Principal Fraser first.
I can't remember whose turn it was to go first, but I'm happy to do it. So first up, I want to thank you, Ramona, and I want to thank everybody else on LSAT just for your leadership and partnership this year. I know this is one of our last times together for the school year, so just appreciate everybody. And I know there will be transitions in the summer and all that, so this is probably the last time that we're all together doing this work. So appreciate all the 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock meetings and missed dinners and missed bedtimes and things like that. Really appreciate you guys. It's selfless work. And I've really gotten a lot, especially my first year, just out of working with everybody officially and unofficially. The feedback's been super helpful for steering us. So just deeply grateful to everybody here. Last campus update for Stuart Hobson for this school year. We are busy working on some hiring for some vacancies. I think we're pretty well positioned to be 100% staffed by July 1st, which is where we were last year. We filled all our vacancies by the end of the school year, which was great. We're continuing to work hard on enrollment for next year. We are, I believe, as of this morning, we were at 68% of the way to our target of 507 students for next year. The gap was closing between rising sixth grade and the other two grade levels. Seventh and eighth grade have only been separated by 4 or 5 percentage points throughout this process. The sixth grade lagged a little bit, but they have started to close that gap. So we're targeting some of our outreach to those rising sixth grade families to find out what we can do to help the few people who are left finish up. As far as like where that data lands, Watkins actually was in third place as of Friday. So it's the Watkins fifth grade families that we need to encourage and connect with to help sew it up for them, assuming that they're coming to us or answer questions if they still have any outstanding ones. I think Ludlow was pretty close to meeting their projection, and then JO was in the middle. We're busy with, closeout for the summer. Families will probably get technology guidance for the end of year and summer pretty soon. I think the expectation is going to be that if you're not, attending a summer program, that students will bring back their technology so that we can make sure it gets updates and a once over before we redistribute it next year. We'll have our summer programs that we've talked about in the past. So we have 3 weeks that are pretty robust, 2 for the Acceleration Academy at the end of July, and then the other week in August, the week of August 9th for the sixth grade summer bridge. We'll be offering some tours the latter half of June. So rising sixth grade families who have enrolled, seventh grade families who are returning and still haven't been in the building, we'll be inviting students and their families in to come tour Stuart Hobson. We're pretty much ready to go to show off the building. So we'll be sending information about that out in the newsletters. We already talked about the budget, and then the CSP, obviously we're working on that, and just really thinking, this came up in our group, and this is framing for us, like how do we plan for reentry socially and academically, I think are like the big questions for us. What are we gonna have to do differently than we would in other school years to support students and their families and staff as they come back to school? And then what might be some completely new routines that we learned during the pandemic that are worthwhile for keeping up. One of the examples that we used was that our teachers have been recognizing there are some students who used to exist in a shell during in-person school, and some of those students are thriving while they're at home. So like, how do we, as we bring those students back into a building and into crowded classrooms, how do we recreate that safety that they were experiencing in their bedroom or living room or wherever it was that they were doing work and thriving this year? So not just reintroducing everybody and rebuilding community, but also make sure that we carry any success from this space into next year. I think that's it for campus updates. I'm probably missing something huge, but we just have a lot going on, and those are the ones I scribbled down. And I think I'm being invaded from behind over here. So I'll take any questions if people have them.
Thank you. Any questions for Principal Fraser? Hearing none, we'll move on to you, Principal Berkowitz.
Okay, I'm getting a good look at the little Fraser over there. Campus updates, here we go. Our end of year assessments started. We started them today, and they're going to continue for the next 2 weeks. So our folks are taking the iReady at the K through 5 math, iReady at 3 through 5 for ELA, and the second graders are taking the RI test. So lots of testing to wrap up before we leave for the year. Okay, I didn't like sequence these.
So who opened that blind?
So enrollment update, we're at 63% for Watkins, 62% for Peabody. Was this a PTA thing? But like our biggest choke point there is like processing the paperwork. You talk to Miss Roy and Miss Turner, they have like stacks of papers just trying to put them through. So again, I'm not concerned with that number. That puts us in the top half of our cluster 4. They're not worried, so I'm not worried. What else is going on? We had that amazing win for the Battle of the Books turned into the debate team. Our team of teachers and students did a great job with that all-day debate about 2 weeks ago. We also had another another person win something. Peyton, a fourth grader, won a writing award in the Global Harmony essay contest. So shout out to Peyton in fourth grade. Some other fun things before we get into the summer is we have our step up days or plan that's been out in the last couple of weeks of the Friday Look Forward. That's the teacher version, our principal message. It's a kind of like a rolling day where our current first graders are going to say hello and goodbye to their teachers, and then the second grade teachers will show. So the rising second graders or current first graders get the chance to meet next year's teaching team. We won't have the teacher student classes done. That'll happen by August. We're working on it though. But at least at the team level, there will be a little preview of your teachers for next year. We can start building those connections and relationships on June 9th. Other things for your calendar, the fifth grade in-person ceremony for promotion is at 9 o'clock. That is a ticketed only event. Kids can only bring 2 people each because we have a 250 person cap. Kindergarten's going on June 22nd. The in-person kids will be broadcasted virtually, so parents can't come into the school, unfortunately, but our virtual kids will also have a virtual ceremony. And we're still hyping up the Rock the Red Parade for Resilience. June 23rd, we're gonna parade around Lincoln Park to celebrate our resilience this year. Not just our kids, not just our teachers, but our parents too. So everybody is welcome to join. I talked to Mr. Nagby about it today, and I've never seen him like brainstorm in the moment out loud, and he's excited to put his flair on a musically enhanced celebratory event. Okay, what else is happening? All right, let's talk about summer. Ramona asked about summer. Summer acceleration invites have gone out, not necessarily all of them, but the first round. We have almost 90% of the people responded to our survey favorably, saying that they wanted to come. 9 folks opted out of 79, so that's a good look. Again, we're going to have a program run by our teachers from 9 to 1, and then our partner that I don't think I can name yet, but the partner's ready to go from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. There are scholarships for that, but otherwise it will be at a cost. Promotional materials will be ready as soon as we can name the partner. That's July 12th, the week of July 12th and the week of July 19th, just 2 weeks. Looking ahead to next year, I should mention that like Mr. Gross is our PE teacher at Watkins, formerly a PE teacher at Peabody, is leading that. He is some thirst for leadership, and he is going to be our summer school coordinator. He's already leading into the role. Next school year, we expect a full return to in-person, as our chancellor and mayor have been saying. One of the concerns I've been talking about in the PTA circles is the start times between Watkins and Peabody. I'm trying to we're going to work within the WTU contract, so that will not be an issue for our staff. We're looking at making some tweaks to Peabody. I've talked to some of the staff leaders there, and it looks like we'll be able to fudge a couple of minutes later and earlier for pickup and drop off, circulating that with a small group of folks who are in that situation, dropping kids and picking kids up at the same time in 2 different places. Sounds like a big challenge, but we're going to be able to work with folks, I think, to come out with a solution. To that end, our partners, I've talked to the 3 providers for aftercare and before care. They're also on deck for aftercare and before care for next year, including a little bit of a flexibility on the start and end time of aftercare, so that like if the 6 o'clock pickup isn't exactly 6 o'clock at both campuses, our Watkins partners said they can go to 6:10, provide a little bit of relief there, and that won't even be an extra charge. So that's a big hurdle for families, and I can't emphasize enough. I want to get the word out that like come back to school. So that leads me to my last thing that I hope. Here's where we need this relational trust. And I was talking with I think that was Kathy earlier about families that declined, right? I've been saying this a couple months now. We had over 200 families decline seats in our in-person offers for term 3 and 4. With the mayor and the chancellor saying like everyone's back, except if you have a medical clearance, we really want to make sure families feel as ready and informed and ideally enthusiastic about coming back, especially if you've turned down a seat or haven't been in at all this year. So I want to put another plug in for spreading the word about our June 15th at 6 o'clock reopening panel. We're going to have parents who are doctors. We're going to have teachers and kids talk about their in-person experience, talk about why they're ready to come back and confident that it's best for kids, and discuss really like the in-person safety measures, because we got 2 really important pieces of feedback in the over 120 people that we surveyed who declined, is that even after like a term of reopening, they still have heard nothing from other people that are there, right? So that goes to that relational trust in the community. Like our families that are virtual don't hear from our in-person families and vice versa. So they don't know the stories of what's happening in there. So we're going to try and do some storytelling there. The other piece of information was, oh shoot, what was the other one? Like safety was the #1 concern. So we're going to have our folks, our people that are here and some other experts talk about the safety precautions that we are taking and that we will have in place again. I expect them to be in place again in the fall, because I don't want to get, I was talking to Ms. Griffin today, like I don't want to get into a situation where there's no medical, waiver for a virtual case. And like, we're making CFSA calls in September because our kids are not attending school, right? So everyone listening here, if you're not comfortable sending your kid back in September and August, come to June 15th and like, let's talk about it. Like, I want everyone to talk about it so that information is shared and folks are ready to attend school if that's going to be the citywide expectation. I want schools to be a place where parents feel like their kids' safety is foremost and learning is foremost. And it's been a long time since some of our families have been in school. And we need to remember how important it is and how joyful it can be, and get everyone in our community ready for this full reopening, because it's going to be a significant change for a lot of people. So anything I can do in this panel idea, I think it is a really good first step, and we'll need to do more to spread the word that school's open and they're safe, and this is how we're keeping them safe. I think that's top of mind for me. And I've been working on this for a couple months now, and you might have seen an article recently about like the mayor's plan to reopen. The headline is like, but will the parents come? Will the kids come? I want to take that question seriously and do as much outreach as possible as we can to instill confidence in a return at the end of August. So please help and spread the word. A link for the meeting hasn't been circulated yet, but information about it has been in my last few principal messages. Yeah, and to Kathy's point earlier, like we did these one-on-one calls for the families that declined, and we're gonna do them again to make sure that they get a heartfelt and personal invitation to attend on the 15th. Oh, speaking of which, that one-on-one calls reminded me that Miss Roy and Miss Caraway are also making one-on-one calls for re-enrollments. And the most common answer we have is, oh, I've got it. I just got to get to it. And that's good news. So those personal touches work. And that should do it for my updates. Oh, last one. Peabody's getting a new playground. I kind of buried that in the thing there. But the capital improvement project, I think this is connected to the stimulus money. It's not going to pop up this year, but next year is a planning year, and the following school year, 22-23, we should have a brand new playground at Peabody. So I'm sure there'll be some type of community engagement for the new playground over the next 15 months.
Principal Berkowitz, is Watkins on schedule to get a new playground as well?
I didn't hear anything about Watkins. So as far as I know, Pam, no.
Interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions for Principal Berkowitz before we move on?
Hi, this is Shannon. Just one quick question. I think it's been talked about in a couple of places, but any updates on Peabody building reopening?
Oh, yeah, sure. The SIT team, last month's meeting went really well, ended way early for the first time. I think the biggest piece of news, we saw pictures of what it looks like in there. They showed them, which was nice. There are no floors, but all that means the subflooring was all removed. The big news is that they have already authorized and I think begun weeks ago now, the overtime. So they're working 7 days a week. They've increased the hours per day. I don't think they could work anymore on the site. And the big ask of the SIT team was to do that proactively instead of in the middle of July. And that's already kicked in. I think some credit to the PTA leadership, other parents, Lona, Charles Allen, and I'm going to mess up the title, but the ANC commissioner has showed up to every SIT meeting, and he has to like approve the DCRA permitting. I'm getting that wrong, I think, but he's been an advocate for the Peabody community as well to like accelerate this project to again instill confidence that we're going to open on time, and I feel pretty good about that. Behind the scenes, the team's been talking to me about when we can plan to get our custodians in there, and me and Miss Turner and Miss Hollis. I think we're going to have a lot of work to do to make the school space ready for teachers. I don't want them to have 3 days of work to only start to set up their class when we know pre-service week is rushed. So I feel confident that we're going to get in there fairly early, even if we're wearing hard hats. And the other thing that's in place to make sure that we're ready first for teachers, and then if we're ready for teachers, we'll be ready for kids, is I've been talking with our foreman, Mr. Starkey at Watkins and Mr. Hooker at Peabody, and our summer cleaning schedule is going to be all front loaded at Watkins. So like Watkins will basically be as close to ready to reopen as possible in the beginning of August. And then we'll move both teams, leave some people, maybe one person back a day at Watkins when the building's empty, but we'll move both custodial teams to Peabody to make sure everything's in place for teachers' return. And Starkey and Hooker are on board with that. And I can't tell you how much I love their partnership. It's been amazing with those two teams working together. And it's really going to come in handy as we reopen Peabody, I think.
Okay, Principal Frazier just shared a link in the chat for the breakout group recording for Stuart Hobson. For anyone interested, I'll make sure it's also included with the minutes and that we get it posted when we post the video. And Lona added a comment. 1.5 million was set aside to renovate the Watkins playground in last year's budget. To the best of our knowledge, it has not moved into the actual planning column yet.
That's what I thought too, Lona. Thank you.
They're expecting community meetings to start in the fall.
Okay, that's what I assumed. I think it's coming from with DPR maybe. I'm sorry, I'm on my phone, guys.
So that's not an if, that's a when for Watkins, it sounds like.
It should be. Just as Lona said, I thought that it was placed in the budget. So we'll see what's going on with that. She said that there are community meetings going on. So I was just ensuring, since you spoke about Peabody, I thought that Watkins should be getting one as well.
Looks like we both schools will.
And Principal Frazier has a HVAC update for Stuart Hobson. If anyone's curious, of course they are.
We are.
So I think we shared at the last meeting that money has been set aside for recommissioning of our system, which the way you'd explain that to a principal is it means we're going to evaluate your system part by part, piece by piece, and tinker with it. And as we tinker with it, we're going to figure out which parts are beyond repair and need replacing. And that's what most of the $1.5 million is for, is to replace any parts, but not yet knowing what those are. So our engineer and I believe and DGS have been by a little bit. They did some initial tinkering, and on a couple of those really brutal days that we've had in the last month, the temperatures were down into the 70s in the places that used to be hotspots. So that's an improvement. Whether or not this is part of the pattern with our system though, is like we will get improvements like that and then it will just go kaput and we'll be back to 95 degrees in classrooms. So we're holding our breath that whatever they did sticks, but we don't know yet what it is that they did. So we're still waiting on like another comprehensive update from them. We did put a work order in for spot coolers for those classrooms that are hotspots that we anticipate using during our summer program. We have not yet gotten feedback about whether or not those spot coolers are available or if they'll be, if they'll be deployed to the building for us in time for the summer. So we're kind of back to a little bit of a waiting space and crossing our fingers that the temporary solutions that have given us some relief stick through July. So I'm continuing to meet with central office and like our instructional superintendent to just game plan for what does that mean? What level of ambiguity are we comfortable with as we continue to promise this in-person experience at our building this summer?
– Thank you for that update. And Catherine just shared that info on the Watkins Playground can be found on page 231 of the capital budget, and she posted a link for that. Exciting. And it's scheduled for completion July of 23. So really exciting. Okay, so next on our agenda is just acknowledgements. I wanted to thank, and I probably did this earlier, but I wanted to say thank you to everyone, to our entire team. We have put in a lot of work, as I think Principal Fraser beat me to it, with the commitment that we've all made to this process, to meeting every month and sometimes twice a month when we were doing budgets, and 3 times, and but we came through each and every time. I wanted to send a special thank you to those who will be leaving our team. We have 3 awesome parent reps. I've been losing sleep over knowing that we're losing Catherine, our secretary, and I don't know how you do it, Catherine. I'm gonna need to take you out for coffee so I can figure out the secret to producing such fabulous minutes in such short time, so that I can share them with whoever we can get to volunteer to fill those shoes of yours, such big shoes. And to Pam, all the support that you've given me. And the guidance, being new to the team, I want to say thank you. And Steve is my middle school expert, the dad extraordinaire. He's on everything. If I send out a message, guys, I know that we're all busy, but Steve is usually the first team member that I get a response or some input from. So I just want to say thank you and let you know how much you will be missed on this side of the team. But I'm sure that I will see some of your faces, not Steve, because your baby's going on to high school, but I will see, hope to see the others still in the meeting in a different role. I know Beth shared earlier, Dewhurst, that she was also moving on. So once again, I want to say thanks to her. I'm not sure about any others or if anyone else want to drop a bomb on me tonight, but I want to make sure that you know how much I appreciate all that you do, that you have done. And yes, Kathy, big shoes to fill, big shoes to fill. Thank you. And that is all for our meeting. We're going to move into public comment. If there are any questions, comments that anyone not on the team has and would like to ask our leaders a question, this would be the time.
Thank you, Ramona. Before we go into public comment, thank you, thank Griffin, thank both of you for your leadership and for guiding us through these meetings and somewhat, difficult conversations. And it can be an emotional roller coaster, but you guys always pull us back and keep us grounded in whatever the work is for the day. So thank you both very much. And thanks to our principals and all the teachers and parents who have stuck it out month after month through the rough times. And if you've lifted up any concerns or shared any guidance that helped make our school better, thank you.
Thank you for that, Evan. Truly appreciate it. I'm looking for hands. You can, if you have a question, a comment, you can raise your hand or you can just unmute and ask. I don't believe I'm seeing any. All right. Okay, not seeing any questions for public comments. I think we have reached the end of our meeting, the last meeting of the school year. Just to recap, thanks again to everyone, all team members. I'll be sending you an email with a doodle poll so that we can figure out a date for our summer transition meeting. And if you could just please take a moment and respond so I can try to pick the date that works best for everyone. My new team members, once again, welcome, 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 and welcome. I will make sure that I include you on that doodle poll so I can get your input and your availability. And I want to wish everyone a very happy summer, enjoyable summer of freedom, hopefully, and getting back connected with your families and seeing people and all the things we couldn't do for the last year and some months. I hope that you all enjoy it this summer. Thank you. And good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.